visualization can be also used to communicate the standard process. Standard processes help, as we learned, to keep the process time variability low, which reduces waiting times in the system, thus also saving time. Now here we have an example of how standard processing at one step can affect upstream process steps. This is a little quiz here. What do you see as a non-standard process here on these intermediate bulk containers, or IBCs? It's not a hard question. What's non-standard here? The labels are all placed in different positions on those IBCs. And so this could be a problem then if the customer uses an automated label reading system or has a particular way of arranging the IBCs in their warehouse. Now, how to fix this? Well, you can enforce the standardization. Here's the labeling station, and operators can just label these IBCs. But if you put a very clear board or photo showing the best practice at the place where the operation takes place, where the labeling's done in this case, then everyone would clearly see immediately the way you're supposed to do things. Now, another example of how you can improve things, improve the standard process using visual management, communicate the standard process using visual management, is by communicating the information again about what needs to be done. And here's the example of a piece of paper that's hung up in the control room, and it tells you which type of torque wrench you need for which type of drum, for opening the drum. And it's not where the actual drum opening is done. And so if you aren't sure, you have to leave your operating area and walk all the way to this control room. So again, more time, more motion to find out which wrench you need. So simply putting up a up-to-date graphical poster photo of the wrench that should be used for which type of drum is one way of improving this. I mean, could also put the list that you have, these torque specification lists, out right at the operating area, but a visual picture here is very, very clear and very quick to see when you can exactly identify the drum. Now, this is, if you've worked in this area for years, you don't need this. But say somebody comes in who's new, might make mistakes, or if you have a bottleneck in your process and you suddenly need someone from another area to come out and help, this type of visual management can be very useful. Now, an important part of this step is the very clear communication of the standard process that should be followed. And so maybe in a little more complicated situation as, which tool to use or how to label, we've got here the standard process for a rework flow. And this is from a English factory. Now, in this case, in this particular situation, the reworking process was not very clearly defined, and it wasn't standardized, and the associates who were doing the rework often had their own techniques and processes to rework a defect, and these were for wood parts. So this type of standard process needed to be developed. And clearly, as you can see here, there's different types of rework processes. So there's this backside repair, spot repair, you might have delamination repair. You might have to have some scratches, so you have to do some repolishing. Or if it's a deep scratch, you need to actually do some resanding. So whatever, again, this is a wood process. So whatever type of rework needed to be done. Now, everything can't be shown on the slide, but the data was generated then for this rework only from the associates on the shop floor who were physically doing the rework. And to complete this process sheet, there were numerous detailed discussions with the associates to clarify the details for this very complex and specific process. And what this required was then listening, understanding, watching, and even recording the processes, and doing that over several shifts, and especially because there's more than one person doing the same type of rework. So here you see then on the left side the process flow And on the right side, very clear step-by-step description of the standard process. And with, for example, you would have the specification that they have to look at and the tools they need and any other remarks. This can also be done for actually using a tool when you have a standard pointed posted at the point of control, and lots of pictures and color codes to show how the process should be actually executed. So now our fourth goal here in performance monitoring, visual management uses performance monitoring often with very, very simple tools. And here's an example of visual data collection on cycle times from a plant in India. And the cycle times in this particular example are a critical key performance indicator, or KPI, for this part. And it was decided then to ask the operators to regularly monitor their performance in this area. And so this created an ownership for the people in the area and made the deviation, and you could see the deviations then, and they had a consequence then for the people. So for each batch, the cycle times were recorded manually on this whiteboard. And whenever a batch exceeded the maximum cycle time the plant had set then for the washing process, the time then was circled in red. So you can see those red circles on there. Then at the next review meeting, the team would discuss what caused the delay and what could be done to avoid it in the future. And once this whiteboard was full, the data would be transferred to an Excel spreadsheet for long-term trends, and they would start the collection anew. Performance monitoring also should show then the developments of the key KPIs over time. And often you have what's called a visual performance board, where a lot of this information is collected. And here we have factory delivery performance for this is semiconductor production with different lines, and which you can clearly see which line is not doing so well. Looks like line 1 tends to be always the lowest line there. Got a little problem over here in May. Line 1's lagging. And then here you see the result of a 5S audit. So 5S is in, of course, our next lecture, but as you move through the months, you see some improvement. In the wood shop, there seems to be a little bit of deviation here from May to March. Maybe they were motivated and then there were some things that still needed to be improved, but overall you're seeing an improved trend. Now, you can also link, depending on how you're going to do your visual management, you can also link some of these trends to the bottom line of the company. So to the financial results, and that also helps bring actually the performance of the company down to the level, I shouldn't say down to the level, but to the level of the actual production. So finally, and this goes hand in hand with performance monitoring, communication of change and improvements can also be done with the help of, as we mentioned before, these visual performance boards. These need to contain information which benefit both the department and the operators that are agreed upon, things like this key performance indicators, information on quality and safety and cost, and include things like people and the problem solving, new ideas, and celebrating successes. So these boards need to be situated for easy access. For example, anyone coming into the production sites can get a quick and clear impression of the performance, understand the problems, the progress, the ideas, etc. And these boards should be used as part of the problem-solving routine. And this is actually not a picture of a manager talking to the group, but a picture of me here and a group of students. But we're looking at the visual performance boards. We're taking a tour at the time of a factory in Singapore and looking at the visual performance boards that they're using. But the idea is that these should be actively used for daily meetings. Maybe the 5-minute morning meeting with the operators in front of the board. All the information is there, discuss the issues, but they should be used as tools to engage the team, to show progress, and to celebrate progress, especially to celebrate the ideas from the shop floor itself, from the people working in the shop floor itself. So these examples are very unique examples from industry projects that are implementing workplace visualization. And clearly you see every situation is different. Some are very, very simple, some are more complicated. But this lecture should provide an overview and give you a starting point for looking into visual management tools for your own workplace, for communication and motivation, improving flow, and eliminating waste.